Welcome to Onyx Story Collective, where every story carries a heartbeat. On Judgment Day, my husband DeMarco sued me for divorce, accusing me of being a failed mother and wife. He even demanded all the properties and custody of my daughter. However, inside the courtroom, I heard a shocking sentence. It was the voice of my 7-year-old daughter Aaliyah, asking the judge, "Your Honor, can I show you something my mommy doesn't know?" The judge nodded his head. My daughter stepped forward, raised her tablet, and pressed the play button. When the video started, everyone in the room froze in stunned silence. Before the story begins, please leave us a comment telling us which state or city you are watching from. Do not forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and bring you more exciting stories. That morning began like any other in their home in Oak Park. Dressed in simple clothes, had been toiling in the kitchen since dawn. The faint aroma of a hot breakfast mixed with the scent of detergent from the washing machine spinning in the laundry nook. Shanice moved quickly but silently, making almost no noise. Over the years, she had learned to move like a shadow in her own home. An effort not to disturb the peace of her husband, DeMarco. At 6 o'clock in the morning, DeMarco came down from the second floor. He looked immaculate. As soon as he appeared in his freshly pressed shirt, Shanice immediately placed a mug of hot black coffee and a steaming breakfast plate on the table. DeMarco sat down and took the mug without even looking at her. "The coffee is a little bitter today," DeMarco said dryly, his eyes fixed on his cell phone screen. "I'm sorry, honey. I thought I measured it right this time," Shanice replied in a low voice. DeMarco did not respond. He simply pushed the breakfast away from his plate and ate a few spoonfuls in silence. Shanice stood near the table, awkwardly waiting for any other order. There were none. The silence between them was so dense and cold that it seemed to freeze the hot steam rising from the coffee on the table. Shanice had forgotten the last time they shared a breakfast filled with laughter. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago when DeMarco started working late and his business trips became longer. "Is Aaliyah up?" DeMarco asked, without lifting his face. "Yes, honey. She is showering. She will be down for breakfast soon," Shanice said. Sure enough, shortly after, the small sound of footsteps came down the stairs. Aaliyah, their 7-year-old daughter, ran toward them in her neat private school uniform. Her smile was bright, a stark contrast to the atmosphere of the morning. "Good morning, Mommy and Daddy." Aaliyah kissed Shanice on the cheek and headed toward DeMarco. He finally put down the phone and forced a slight smile toward his daughter. "Good morning, Princess. Finish your food. Daddy will take you to school." "Wow, I'm going with Daddy," Aaliyah exclaimed with joy. Shanice exhaled a sigh of relief. At least in front of Aaliyah, DeMarco made an effort to act with warmth. This brief breakfast hour was the only family time they had. As soon as Aaliyah finished eating, DeMarco stood up immediately, grabbed his briefcase, kissed Aaliyah on the forehead, and headed to the front door. As always, he walked past Shanice as if she were not there. Not a goodbye, not a kiss, not even a glance. Only the roar of his luxury car driving away left Shanice alone in the vastness of her large house. Shauna spent the rest of the morning with her routine, clearing the table, washing the dishes, doing the laundry, and tidying the rooms. She did it all with efficiency. She always strove to keep the house perfect. She thought that if the house was clean enough, if the food was delicious enough, if she was quiet enough, maybe the old DeMarco would return. But the old DeMarco seemed to have left a long time ago. At noon, Shanice went to pick Aaliyah up from school. This was her favorite time of the day. She loved listening to Aaliyah chatter about her friends, her art class, or her lunchbox. "Mommy, today I got 5 gold stars from the teacher. I answered the question right," Aaliyah chirped happily, holding her mother's hand. "Wow, my daughter is so smart," Shanice congratulated sincerely, pinching her little nose. When they arrived home, while Shanice was helping Aaliyah take off her shoes, she heard the sound of a motorcycle pulling up in front of the main door. A uniformed courier shouted her name. "Shanice, a package for you." Shanice frowned. She had not ordered anything. She walked to the front door and received a large thick brown envelope. There was no sender name, only the logo of a law firm in the upper right corner. Shanice's heart began to beat uncomfortably. "Who is it, Mommy?" asked Aaliyah, who had followed her. "I don't know, Princess. It's probably just junk mail. Go change, and then we'll have lunch," Shanice said, trying to keep her voice steady. After Aaliyah ran to her room, Shanice sat on the sofa in the living room. Her hands trembled slightly as she ripped open the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of papers. The first sentence on the top page made Shanice gasp for air. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Shanice's world seemed to stop. Her ears were ringing. She reread the words, hoping her eyes had deceived her. Plaintiff DeMarco, defendant Shanice. Reason for the suit. The wife has totally failed in the fulfillment of her marital duties. Shanice felt nauseous, failed. She had dedicated her entire life to this house. She had given up her career at DeMarco's request. She had taken care of Aaliyah. She made sure DeMarco's shirts were spotless every morning. What did he mean by failed? She continued reading the following chapters. Her eyes went out of focus at the demands DeMarco was presenting. The demands were cruel. DeMarco was not only asking for a divorce, but he was also requesting full custody of Aaliyah, alleging that Shanice was emotionally unstable and incapable of raising the child properly. And most devastating of all, he demanded the totality of the marital assets, including the house they lived in, with the argument that Shanice had not contributed financially, and that all assets were solely the result of DeMarco's efforts. Shanice collapsed weakly onto the cold hardwood floor, the papers scattered around her, so that was why DeMarco had been so cold for months. This had been a plan hatched in secret behind her back. The front door opened. DeMarco had returned from work unusually early. He stood in the doorway, looking at Shanice, slumped on the floor, and then at the scattered papers. His expression was cold and without a shred of guilt. Honey, what does this mean? Shanice's voice trembled and tears began to well up. DeMarco took off his shoes in silence. He walked over, loosening his tie. He did not deny it or explain. He simply said coldly, "It is exactly what you read. I don't want to live with you anymore, Shanice. You have failed. You have failed as a wife and as a mother." Failed. Shanice moaned in disbelief. "I have taken care of this house and raised Aaliyah. Taken care of the house." DeMarco scoffed with disdain. "The only thing you have done is spend my money. Aaliyah needs a better mother, a competent one, not someone who only knows how to cry and complain like you. But all the property, this house, and Aaliyah, honey, you can't take them from me." Shanice began to scream hysterically. DeMarco crouched down and looked at her with a sharp look filled with hatred that Shanice had never seen before. "I can and I will. My lawyer has all the evidence gathered. You won't get anything, Shanice. You will leave this house without a single dollar." DeMarco stood up and smoothed his suit. He looked toward the stairs, making sure Aaliyah couldn't hear. "And get ready." DeMarco grinned a chilling smile that froze Shanice's blood. "My lawyer says that even your own daughter will testify in court about how incompetent you are as a mother." Shanice froze in terror and her heart shattered into pieces. DeMarco not only wanted to divorce her, but he wanted to destroy her completely. Part 2 of 7. 10,015 characters. Shanice did not sleep that night. After the cruel confrontation, DeMarco had retired to the guest room and locked the door as if Shanice were a threat. Shanice spent the night in her daughter's room, sitting in the chair by the bed, watching Aaliyah's peaceful face as she slept. Her tears did not stop falling. How could DeMarco say that Aaliyah would testify against her? Aaliyah was everything to her. What would they have told her, little girl? That thought tormented her more than any other accusation. The next morning, DeMarco acted as if nothing had happened. He woke Aaliyah up, prepared her uniform, and took her to school. He did not speak a word to Shanice. When Aaliyah asked why her mother had puffy eyes, DeMarco answered with indifference, "Mommy isn't feeling very well, princess." After they left, true terror took hold of Shanice. She had to fight. She couldn't give up on Aaliyah, so she grabbed her phone and looked for the names of renowned divorce lawyers in Detroit. But the harsh reality hit her soon. Lawyers needed money, a retainer, a consultation fee. Shanice realized she had no money. For all these years, DeMarco had only given her a monthly allowance, budgeted exactly for groceries and Aaliyah's school expenses. There was no room to save anything. Her only hope was their joint account, the one she believed was their family emergency fund. With trembling hands, Shanice opened the banking app on her phone. She entered the password with her heart hammering. When the balance appeared on the screen, Shanice felt her legs fail. Zero. The account was at $0. It couldn't be. There should be hundreds of thousands of dollars in there. Shanice refreshed repeatedly, hoping for a system error, but the number 0 stared back at her. She opened the transaction history and her eyes widened with horror. Over the last 6 months, DeMarco had been systematically withdrawing large amounts of money, transferring them to another account Shanice didn't know. The last withdrawal had been made just 3 days ago, emptying the rest of the account. DeMarco had planned this. He wasn't just leaving, he had deliberately crippled her financially so she couldn't fight back. Shanice cried in despair. How was she going to hire a lawyer without a single dollar? She remembered her wedding jewelry. She ran to her room and opened her jewelry box. It was empty. Only a few imitation trinkets remained. DeMarco had taken even her heirlooms. In her desperation, Shanice remembered an old friend who worked at a legal aid agency. She called her and told her the situation between sobs. Her friend felt pity but couldn't do much except give her a name. His name is attorney Marcus Washington, her friend said. He has a small office on the second floor of an old strip mall on Woodward Avenue. He isn't an expensive lawyer, but he is honest and dedicated. Go see him. Explain your situation. Maybe he can help you. Shanice had no other choice. With the little cash she had left in her purse, she hailed a cab and went to the address her friend gave her. Attorney Washington's office was exactly as her friend had described. Small, modest, and located on the second floor of an old building with peeling paint. Attorney Washington was a middle-aged black man with thick glasses and a calm demeanor. He listened patiently to Shanice's story without interrupting, only nodding occasionally and taking notes. When Shanice finished, Attorney Washington exhaled a long sigh. "Shanice, this is going to be an uphill battle," he said in a low voice. "Your husband has prepared all of this very thoroughly. He doesn't just want a divorce. He wants to destroy you." "I know, attorney, but I don't care about the properties. I just want Aaliyah. Please help me. I don't have money now, but I will pay you. I will pay you in installments. I will do anything," Shanice pleaded desperately. Attorney Washington looked at her for a moment. "Let's leave the money issue for later. Shanice, what is important now is that we have to move fast. This lawsuit has already been filed. We have to prepare a response immediately." Attorney Washington asked Shanice to wait. He left the room and returned a few minutes later with a folder full of photocopies. They were the lawsuit documents filed by DeMarco's side. "Your husband's lawyer is attorney Reginald Blackstone. He is known for being sharp and not hesitating to use dirty tactics," Attorney Washington said firmly. "Let's see what evidence they have presented." Shanice nodded. Her heart was beating hard. Attorney Washington opened the folder. The first page was photographs. Shanice went into shock, seeing photos of the interior of her house. Photos of dirty dishes piled in the kitchen. Photos of the living room cluttered with toys. Photos of dirty clothes piled in the laundry basket. "But this is unfair," Shanice protested. "These are photos he took when I was sick. I had a high fever for 3 days, and DeMarco didn't want to help at all. He took them on purpose." "Shanice, I'm afraid this is manipulated to make it look like you are a lazy person who doesn't maintain the house," Attorney Washington said with a bitter expression. They turned to the following pages. They were credit card statements. Shanice saw a list of charges for luxury handbags, jewelry, and dinners at expensive restaurants she had never bought. "That's not me. I didn't buy these things." "Was it an additional card in your name?" asked Attorney Washington. "Yes, an additional one. DeMarco managed it. He told me to use it if I needed to, but he took it often, saying his main card had exceeded the limit." "Oh my God, he set me up." Shanice felt the world spinning. She realized that every small kindness from DeMarco was actually part of his evil plan. And then Attorney Washington stopped at a thick document toward the end. "And this is the most damaging thing, Shanice." "What is it, attorney?" "It is the testimony of an expert witness, a child psychologist." Attorney Washington handed the report to Shanice. She read it. The report was written in cold clinical terms. It said that the psychologist had conducted covert observations of Shanice's interactions with Aaliyah. The conclusion was that Shanice was emotionally unstable, neglected her daughter's needs, and was a detrimental mother to Aaliyah's psychological development. The report recommended full custody for DeMarco for the mental health of the child. "This makes no sense. When was this observation done?" "I never met a psychologist." Shanice's voice shook violently. According to this report, the observation was conducted in public places at Somerset Mall, at Palmer Park, and when you picked up your daughter from school, Attorney Washington explained, staring at her. "That's crazy. Aaliyah always seemed happy with me. This is defamation. Who is this psychologist?" Attorney Washington flipped the cover of the report. "Her name is Simone, a lady named Dr. Simone Richardson," he said. "Here are all her credentials. She seems very professional and convincing." Attorney Washington looked at Shanice seriously. "Shanice, do you know this woman, Simone?" Shanice shook her head, bewildered. Her tears began to fall again. "No, attorney, I don't know her. I have never seen her in my life." The reality of living under the same roof with the man who planned to destroy her was a silent hell. DeMarco had not left the house. He had simply moved into the guest room. The once warm house now felt like a frozen battlefield. With emotional landmines hidden in every corner, Shanice had to live with her enemy. See him every morning, and pretend everything was normal in front of Aaliyah. DeMarco executed his strategy perfectly in front of the child. He was the best father in the world. He used to come back from work earlier than usual, something he hadn't done in months. He brought expensive gifts. One night, he came back with a big box featuring a cartoon princess. "This is your new tablet, Olea," DeMarco exclaimed, hugging the girl. "This is much better than the old one. It has a better camera, and Daddy installed lots of games for you." Alia's eyes shone. "Wow, thanks Daddy." Shanice, who was folding laundry in the living room, could only swallow hard. Her heart ached. She knew what DeMarco was doing. He was buying their daughter's loyalty. Shanice couldn't compete. She didn't have $1 to buy Olea anything. "You see, Princess," said DeMarco, looking at Shanice with a sneer while turning on the new tablet, "when you live with Daddy later, you'll be able to buy a new toy every week. Unlike someone who only knows how to fold clothes." Shanice stopped the movement of her hands. She had a knot in her chest. She wanted to scream. She wanted to insult DeMarco, but she couldn't in front of Olea. If she got angry, it would only prove DeMarco's accusation that she was emotionally unstable. So Shanice continued folding the clothes in silence, head bowed, letting DeMarco's poison fill the room. The terror continued daily. DeMarco systematically undermined Shanice's authority as a mother. If Shanice prepared dinner, DeMarco came into the kitchen, tasted the food, and said in front of Olea, "Honey, the soup is a little salty again." "It's okay. Tomorrow, we'll order takeout." If Shanice got ready to help Olea with her homework, DeMarco interrupted her. "Let me do it. The way Mommy teaches you is too complicated. You're going to get confused." Shanice felt smaller and smaller, more and more invisible in her own home. She began to doubt herself. Did she really cook badly? Was she really incapable of teaching her daughter? DeMarco played his role too well, making Shanice seem like an inept woman. Olea, trapped in the middle, began to show signs of confusion. It was clear she loved her mother, but she also enjoyed all the attention and gifts from her father. Sometimes Olea clung to Shanice as if seeking protection, but other times she seemed uncomfortable, especially after DeMarco whispered something to her. One night Shanice couldn't sleep. She walked silently to Olia's room to make sure her daughter was okay. She opened the door slightly. Olea was sleeping deeply. On her desk was the new tablet DeMarco had bought her. But as Shanice got closer to tuck Olea in, she saw something strange. Olea's small hand was clutching something under the pillow. It wasn't her favorite teddy bear. Shanice looked very carefully. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Olia's old tablet, the cheap one with the screen cracked in several places. The one Shanice always told her not to play with for fear the pieces of glass might hurt her. Shanice frowned. Why did Olea still keep this broken tablet? Why hide it under the pillow when the newer tablet was on the desk? Shanice didn't understand. She thought it was just a child's emotional attachment to an old toy. She didn't know that broken tablet held a secret that was going to change everything. She returned to her room. Her mind was even more confused. The climax happened a few days later. Shanice was waiting for Olea to return from school. She had promised Olea she would bake her favorite chocolate cake. But an hour passed after dismissal time and Olea didn't arrive. Shanice called the school. They told her Olea had been picked up by DeMarco. Shanice's heart sank. DeMarco hadn't told her anything. She called DeMarco several times, but he didn't answer. 2 hours passed. 3 hours passed. Shanice was almost crazy with worry, pacing back and forth in the living room with tears in her eyes. It wasn't until 9 at night that she heard DeMarco's car. Olea entered laughing, carrying a large bag full of things from an amusement park. Behind her, DeMarco walked calmly with a smirk. "Where have you been, honey? Why did you take Olea without telling me?" "I was dying of worry," Shanice shouted with a voice containing tears and rage. "Daddy took me to Cedar Point Park, Mommy. It was so much fun," Olea exclaimed happily. DeMarco looked at Shanice coldly. "So what? I'm her father. I have the right to take my own daughter. Besides, you aren't doing anything at home. But you should have told me." "Why? So you could ruin our fun with your drama." It was then that Shanice smelled it. It was a woman's perfume, a soft but unfamiliar scent permeating DeMarco's shirt. It wasn't Shanice's perfume, nor was it the cologne DeMarco usually wore. "Honey, you." DeMarco followed the direction of Shanice's gaze. He knew she had smelled it. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. He waited for Olea to run to her room to put away her new toys. Alone, DeMarco approached Shanice. His face was very close and his voice hissed low, full of venom. "Did you notice? Did you really think I was going to live forever with a woman as boring as you? You are nothing compared to her." Shanice took a step back, gasping for air. There was another woman. All All the accusations were nothing more than an attempt to get rid of her to be with the other one. Who is she? Shanice whispered. None of your business. She is a successful, intelligent woman who knows how to please a man, unlike you. That night, Aaliyah came to Shanice's room. Mommy, why are you crying? Shanice wiped her tears immediately. I'm okay, princess. My head just hurts a little. Aaliyah looked at her mother with a look hard to decipher. Are you really sick? Mommy, Daddy says that since you are sick, you are often sad and angry. Daddy said that if I go live with him later, Mommy will be able to rest and get better. Shanice's heart shattered. DeMarco had been injecting poison into her little daughter's mind. He had manipulated Aaliyah into believing it was an act of kindness to leave her side because her mother was sick. Shanice hugged Aaliyah tight. Aaliyah, listen to me. I am not sick. I just love you so much. I promise I won't get angry anymore. But the damage was already done. Shanice saw hesitation in her daughter's eyes. DeMarco, who was listening to the conversation from the doorway, only sneered in the darkness. He walked past Shanice, who was still stunned, and gave a little tap on his wife's shoulder, feigning sympathy. Enjoy your time, DeMarco mocked in a low voice in Shanice's ear. Soon she won't even want to call you mom. The mediation hearing was a cruel joke. They were seated in a small stuffy room at the Wayne County Family Court. The court-appointed mediator tried to find middle ground. Attorney Washington began with a calm voice. DeMarco, Shanice doesn't ask for much. She only wants custody of Aaliyah, or at least shared custody. Regarding property, we can talk about it. Before Attorney Washington could finish, Attorney Blackstone, well-dressed and expensive, interrupted him quickly. There is nothing to talk about, Attorney Blackstone said harshly. He slammed the file he had in his hands onto the table. Our client's position is clear. Shanice is the failed party in this marriage. It has been proven that she has failed in maintaining the home and raising the child. Our client demands full custody for Aaliyah's future. DeMarco sat beside him with a blank face as if he were the victim. I only want the best for my daughter, he said with a tone of fake sadness. Taking her mother away is the best for her. Shanice trembled. Attorney Blackstone chuckled. Shanice, if you keep insisting, we will take this to trial. And I assure you that all the evidence we have will humiliate you. The photos, the credit card statements, the expert testimony. You had better sign this agreement. Our client is being benevolent by allowing you to leave the house without any countersuit. Leave my house with nothing, and without Aaliyah. Are you crazy? Shanice screamed. The mediator tried to intervene, but DeMarco and his lawyer were inflexible. The mediation broke down completely. Attorney Washington patted Shanice on the shoulder as they left. Stay strong, Shanice. The real fight begins now. The first day of trial approached. Shanice had a knot in her stomach since morning. Attorney Washington reminded her to keep calm at all costs. The courtroom was cold and intimidating with high wooden walls, heavy chairs, and the judge's gavel looking very authoritative. DeMarco was sitting on the opposite side, looking very confident with Attorney Blackstone. The trial began. Attorney Blackstone was first. He spoke fluently, and his voice was loud and sure. He presented his version of the facts. He showed the photos of the messy house, accusing Shanice of being a lazy and dirty housewife. He showed the credit card statements, accusing Shanice of being wasteful and financially irresponsible. Your Honor, Attorney Blackstone said dramatically, while my client DeMarco worked hard to earn money, his wife was at home wasting it and neglecting her daughter and her home. Shanice wanted to scream that it was all a lie, that DeMarco had set her up, that he had used the card, that he had taken the photos on purpose when she was sick. But the only thing she could do was clasp her hands under the table. Attorney Washington stopped her with a reassuring look. When it was Attorney Washington's turn, he tried to refute. He explained that the photos were taken out of context. He explained that the credit card statements had been used by DeMarco himself, but his arguments sounded weak. It was Shanice's word against the physical evidence presented by Attorney Blackstone. The judge took notes, but his expression was unreadable. And then came the moment Shanice feared most. The plaintiff calls his expert witness, Attorney Blackstone said, Dr. Simone Richardson, child psychologist. The courtroom door opened. A woman entered. Shanice held her breath. The woman was beautiful, very elegant. She had her hair pulled back neatly, wore a professional blazer, and walked with a confident stride. She didn't look like an evil woman at all. She looked convincing. As the woman took her oath, Shanice smelled the same perfume, the same fragrance that permeated DeMarco's shirt that night. Shanice's heart stopped. It was her, DeMarco's mistress, and she was posing as a child psychologist. Simone sat in the witness box. She spoke calmly, her diction clear, using psychological terms that sounded very professional and impressive. Yes, Your Honor. Simone began to testify, answering Attorney Blackstone's question. I conducted observations of the natural behavior of Mrs. Shanice and her daughter Aaliyah over the last 3 months. And what were your findings, Doctor? Asked Attorney Blackstone. Simone opened her notes. My findings were very concerning. I found a pattern of behavior in Mrs. Shanice that tends to be inconsistent and emotionally volatile. There are signs of significant emotional distress. Simone began to detail the lies one by one, turning facts into deadly weapons. First observation. At Somerset Mall, Mrs. Shanice pulled Aaliyah forcefully, speaking to her loudly, which made Aaliyah cry in fear in front of people. This shows a low capacity for emotional regulation. Shanice closed her eyes. She remembered that day. Aaliyah had almost thrown herself toward the wrong escalator, and Shanice had shouted and pulled Aaliyah back in shock. Aaliyah, be careful. She wasn't angry. She was terrified that Aaliyah would get hurt. But Simone had turned it into verbal abuse. Second observation. In Palmer Park, Simone continued, Mrs. Shanice seemed to be more absorbed in her phone, ignoring Aaliyah, who was playing alone. When Aaliyah fell, Mrs. Shanice didn't notice immediately. When she did, her reaction was exaggerated and tended toward hysteria, which further traumatized Aaliyah about the fall. Another lie. Shanice remembered she was texting about the grocery list DeMarco had asked for. Aaliyah tripped and Shanice got genuinely scared. She ran immediately, hugged and consoled Aaliyah. Her reaction was that of a concerned mother, not a hysterical one. My conclusion, said Simone, staring at the judge with a steady voice, is that Mrs. Shanice does not have the stable emotional capacity to raise a 7-year-old girl. There are strong signs of parentification syndrome, where Mrs. Shanice subconsciously projects her own unhappiness and emotional problems onto the child. For Aaliyah's mental health, I strongly recommend full custody for the father, Mr. DeMarco, who is the more stable figure. The room fell silent. Simone's testimony was very powerful, very scientific, very destructive. Shanice cried silently. It's a lie, she whispered to Attorney Washington. It's all a lie. She is DeMarco's mistress. It's her. Calm down, Shanice. Attorney Washington replied tensely. Don't react. That's what they want. Attorney Washington stood up for cross-examination. He tried. Dr. Richardson, are you sure you can make such a serious diagnosis based solely on distance observations? Simone smiled slightly. On the contrary, counselor, natural observations without the subject being aware are the most accurate. There is no manipulation. It is pure real behavior. You were paid by Mr. DeMarco for this testimony. Isn't that right? I was paid for my professional services, counselor, not for my conclusions. My conclusions are objective and based on data from the field. Simone retorted cleverly. Attorney Washington was at a dead end. Simone had dodged too well. She had covered all the holes. The trial adjourned for the day. Shanice left the room with her legs shaking. She felt destroyed. She saw DeMarco smiling slightly, nodding to Simone with a look of satisfaction. In the lobby, Shanice leaned against the wall and sobbed. We lost, attorney. We lost. They have everything. Attorney Washington remained silent for a moment. Then he stared at DeMarco and Simone, who were walking together in the distance, discreetly separated but not entirely far apart. Not yet, Shanice, Attorney Washington said in a low voice, eyes narrowed. I know something is wrong. The way she looks at him when she thinks no one sees her is not the way a professional psychologist looks at a client. Attorney Washington turned to Shanice. We have to find out who she really is. A few days before the next hearing, Attorney Washington called Shanice to his office. His face looked tired. The stack of papers on the desk looked thicker than before. Shanice, I tried to trace the woman's background. Attorney Washington was blunt. The result is different from what we expected. Shanice's heart raced. What do you mean, attorney? Her credentials are clean. To clean, sighed Attorney Washington, rubbing the bridge of his nose. She is registered with the Michigan Psychological Association. She has a registered practice clinic in Southfield. All the documentation is perfect. Either she is a real psychologist that DeMarco hired to lie for money, or DeMarco forged this entire identity very cleanly. The truth is, we cannot attack her by accusing her of being a fake psychologist. The court would dismiss our claim immediately. The brief hope Shanice had held vanished instantly. So, we can't prove she's lying. No, we simply can't prove she isn't a psychologist. The only way is to refute her testimony. And that means you have to testify, Shanice. Attorney Washington looked at Shanice seriously. You have to tell your whole side of the story about the photos. about the credit cards, about DeMarco's behavior, and most importantly, you must not get emotionally upset. Attorney Blackstone will definitely try to provoke you. He will want you to look hysterical in front of the judge, exactly as Dr. Richardson described you. Shanice nodded silently. I will do it, attorney. I will try. The day arrived. It was Shanice's turn to sit on the witness stand. After being sworn in, Attorney Washington began with gentle questions, guiding Shanice to tell of her life as a housewife. Shanice explained in a voice attempting to remain as calm as possible. She spoke of how she left her job to focus on caring for Aaliyah, explained her routine from dawn until late at night. About the photos of the messy house, Shanice, can you explain the context? Asked Attorney Washington. Yes, attorney. Those photos were taken by DeMarco about 2 months ago. I was severely ill with a high fever for 3 days. At that time, I could barely get out of bed. I asked DeMarco to take care of the household, but he said he was too busy with work, so the house got very messy. I didn't have the energy to clean, Shanice explained. And about the credit card statements. It was an additional card in my name, but DeMarco had it more frequently. He said his main card often reached the limit with business matters. I believed him. I never bought those luxury bags nor that jewelry. I didn't know about those charges until I saw them in the lawsuit documents. Shanice said everything with honesty. She saw some in the gallery begin to whisper. Some looked at her with sympathy, but the judge remained silent. His face was unreadable. Then came Attorney Blackstone's turn. The cunning lawyer stood up, smoothed his tie, and walked toward the witness stand with a sneer. Shanice, he began in a sickly sweet tone. So, you mean to say that your husband, Mr. DeMarco, who works hard and brings money home, set you up on purpose? Is that it? Shanice stammered. I didn't say that. I just said what happened. But that sounds like the husband takes photos of the dirty house. The husband uses the credit card. Everything is the husband's fault. It seems that you are not to blame for anything. Are you perfect? Of course not. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a failure. Not a failure. Attorney Blackstone scoffed with disdain. Shanice, you said you were sick when those photos were taken. Do you have any medical report proving you were gravely ill for 3 days? Shanice remained silent. I didn't go to the hospital. I just took medicine from the pharmacy. I thought I would recover. So, there is no proof. Attorney Blackstone attacked quickly. It's just your word against real photographic evidence. Interesting. Attorney Blackstone moved to another topic about the credit cards. You say your husband used them, but the card is in your name. Did you ever inform the bank that the card was being misused? No. Did you ever reprimand your husband? No. You said nothing. Doesn't this prove you are negligent and financially irresponsible? Or does it mean you approved all the purchases? I trusted him. He was my husband. Shanice's voice rose. Blind trust, snapped Attorney Blackstone. A trust that ruined the family finances. And now you blame your husband. I am not blaming. Enough. Attorney Blackstone raised his hand, returned to his table, and picked up a large printed photo. He held it up for the judge and everyone to see. Your Honor, I request permission to present Exhibit P12. Shanice's eyes widened with horror. It was a photo of her in her bedroom, a few weeks before the divorce papers arrived. Hair disheveled, crying and screaming. Mrs. Shanice, can you explain this photo? Asked Attorney Blackstone with a triumphant tone. Shanice trembled violently. Tears began to well up again. Isn't this real proof of what Dr. Richardson said? Volatile emotions, hysteria. Is this the face of a competent mother? You don't understand, Shanice wailed. Her tears were now pouring down. That night, DeMarco had just come home. He called me a useless wife. He said I was a burden. He insulted me. He said I didn't deserve to be Aaliyah's mother. He provoked me. So you admit it? Attorney Blackstone attacked without giving her a breath. You admit you screamed hysterically. You admit you lost control. You are emotionally volatile. Exactly as Dr. Richardson described, right? No, shouted Shanice. She stood up from her chair. He set me up. He took the photo of me in secret after hurting me. He is a devil. He is enough. The judge's gavel struck hard. Witness. Calm down. Sit down, Shanice sobbed. Her shoulders shook. She slumped back into her chair. Destroyed. Everything destroyed. She had behaved exactly as DeMarco and Attorney Blackstone wanted. She looked hysterical. She looked unstable. She looked the image of the failed mother they had fabricated. She looked toward DeMarco's side. The man had his head bowed, making a fake grimace of sadness, as if he were hurt by his wife's instability. Attorney Blackstone smiled smugly. The judge shook his head slowly. His expression was clear. He had already taken a side. That day's trial ended with total destruction for Shanice's side. Attorney Washington tried to console her as they left, but Shanice felt numb. "It's over, attorney," she whispered weakly. That night was the longest of her life. The sentencing hearing was going to be the next day. Shanice knew she was going to lose. She was going to lose Aaliyah. She went into Aaliyah's room. Her daughter was already asleep. DeMarco was not home, probably celebrating his victory with Simone in advance. Shanice sat at the foot of the bed, stroking her daughter's hair. Her tears fell silently onto Aaliyah's cheek, and the girl stirred a little. Mommy Aaliyah opened her eyes, half asleep. Go back to sleep, princess," whispered Shanice, her voice hoarse from crying. She hugged her daughter tight, maybe the last hug as a full mother. "I want you to know whatever happens tomorrow, Mommy loves you very much. Always." Sensing her mother's sadness, Aaliyah hugged her back tightly. "I love you too, Mommy." Shanice undid the hug slowly. It was then she saw it again. The corner of the old cracked tablet was sticking out from under Aaliyah's pillow. Aaliyah was clutching it tightly, even while sleeping. Shanice couldn't understand why Aaliyah was so obsessed with that broken object. But that night she was too destroyed to think deeper about it. She simply kissed her daughter on the forehead and left to face the end of her world. The courtroom was colder than usual. The morning air was heavy and suffocating. Shanice sat rigidly in her chair, eyes puffy and empty. She hadn't slept all night. Beside her, Attorney Washington stared ahead with a somber expression. He knew he had done everything possible, but like Shanice, they faced a giant wall. The atmosphere on the opposite side of the room was very different. DeMarco looked fresh and confident in a new suit. He smiled occasionally and exchanged quiet jokes with Attorney Blackstone. Victory was before his eyes. In the gallery, Shanice saw Simone. The woman was seated elegantly, dressed in a cream-colored dress, looking at Shanice with a barely visible smile. The smile of the victor. The judge entered. The room fell silent instantly. Shanice's heart beat so hard it hurt. In the matter of the divorce petition, registry number, family court case number, the judge began formally. "Today's subject is the reading of the verdict, but before that, I requested both parties present their closing arguments." Attorney Blackstone stood up first. He summarized his victory skillfully. "Your Honor," he said loudly, "during this trial, we have seen irrefutable evidence. The photographic proof showing Mrs. Shanice's neglect of household tasks, the financial proof showing her irresponsibility, and most importantly, the testimony of the eminent child psychologist, Dr. Richardson, who objectively and scientifically presented the defendant's emotional instability." Attorney Blackstone pointed to Shanice. "We even witnessed Mrs. Shanice's hysterical conduct in this courtroom during the last trial, which supports Dr. Richardson's diagnosis and is clearly recorded." He turned toward DeMarco. "On the other hand, we have Mr. DeMarco, a capable father, financially successful, and above all, emotionally stable, and genuinely concerned for his daughter's future. Your Honor, the choice here is very clear. It is not about punishing the wife, but about saving the child, for Aaliyah's best interest. I beg you to grant full custody to our client, Mr. DeMarco, and approve his request for division of assets." Attorney Blackstone sat down with a smug smile. Now it was Attorney Washington's turn. He stood up slowly, looked around the room before looking at the judge. "Your Honor," began Attorney Washington with a soft but firm voice, "what we have witnessed here is not proof. It is character assassination. A very well-planned defamation. Photos can lie. One can take a photo of the best chef's kitchen in the world at the wrong moment and make it look dirty. Statements can be manipulated, especially when one party has total financial control and the trust of the other. And the expert testimony, the testimony of an expert who only observed from a distance and drew radical conclusions from a few fragments of incidents out of context, is stronger than the deep maternal love a mother has accumulated over 7 years." Attorney Washington looked directly at DeMarco. "Your Honor, we are not saving a girl. We are witnessing a greedy husband try to get rid of his wife, steal her assets, and cruelly take away the only thing that is most precious to her, her daughter. Shanice is a good mother." His voice trembled slightly with emotion. "She is not perfect. No mother is, but she has dedicated her life to Aaliyah. Do not allow this well-woven defamation to destroy that bond. I beg you to judge with conscience." Attorney Washington sat down. The room was silent. His argument had been excellent, emotional, but Shanice knew it wasn't enough. Attorney Washington's argument was based on belief. Attorney Blackstone's argument was based on physical evidence and expert testimony. In the eyes of the law, the winner was already obvious. The judge cleared his throat, put on his glasses, and opened the thick file in front of him. This was the moment. Having reviewed all documents from both parties, heard all testimonies, and considered all evidence presented, the judge began with an expressionless tone. Shanice's heart shrank. The court notes that the plaintiff, Mr. DeMarco, has been successful in presenting significant evidence. The judge continued. Shanice lowered her head and closed her eyes. First, the visual evidence, that is, the photographs demonstrated the negligence of the defendant, Mrs. Shanice, in household management. Second, the financial evidence demonstrated a considerable spending imbalance on the credit card in the defendant's name. Every sentence was a knife cut, and most damaging, said the judge. His voice sounding definitive is the testimony of the expert witness, Dr. Richardson, regarding Mrs. Shanice's emotional state. This testimony was unfortunately reinforced by the defendant's own conduct in the last trial, providing the court with a very troubling image of the psychological environment for the child's growth. Shanice began to cry silently. It was over. DeMarco looked at Shanice, and a slight cruel smile of victory appeared at the corner of his mouth. Simone, behind him, sat up straighter in her seat, ready to applaud. With all considerations mentioned above, and especially for the best interest and mental health of the minor Olia, the judge raised his gavel and Shanice closed her eyes, ready to hear the sentence that would destroy her life. The court rules stop. The voice was small, but it cut through the silence of the courtroom. It was sharp and clear. Everyone turned their heads in unison toward the source of the voice. In the slightly open door at the back of the room stood Aaliyah. She was alone, still in her school uniform. Obviously, she had snuck in. DeMarco's face went from arrogance to shock and pallor. Aaliyah, what are you doing here? Get out of here, he shouted in panic. Guard Aaliyah. Sit down, Princess. DeMarco tried again with a tense voice, but Aaliyah didn't move. She walked into the courtroom. The sound of her small steps echoed on the marble floor. She didn't look at her mother, who was astonished with her mouth open. She didn't look at her father, who was furious. She looked directly at the judge. The room, which had been silent, awaiting the sentence, was now frozen. The gavel, which was about to fall, stopped in midair. The judge's eyes widened, looking at the little girl in the doorway. Shanice turned around, feeling her heart fall out of her chest. Aaliyah, she whispered in disbelief. What was her daughter doing here? Who had brought her? DeMarco's reaction was the fastest. His face, a moment before full of arrogance and triumph, was now pale and bloodless. There was pure terror in his eyes. "Oh, Leah," he yelled. His voice rose without the disguise of calm. "What are you doing here? Get out of here. This isn't a playground. Guard, how can a child enter?" Aaliyah shrank at her father's scream, but she didn't back down. Instead, she walked deeper into the room. "Aaliyah," Daddy said, "turn around and sit down." DeMarco shouted again, now half standing. His lawyer, Attorney Blackstone, was also bewildered. He stood up and shouted at the judge, "Your Honor, this is a procedural outrage. This trial is confidential. A minor should not be here and should not interrupt the proceeding. Order your staff to remove the child." Shanice was still frozen. She was confused. A part of her mind was shattering over the fact that Alia was in this horrible place. The other part trembled with fear. What was Aaliyah going to say? Had DeMarco succeeded in poisoning her completely? Would Aaliyah tell the judge she preferred her father? The thought made Shanice nauseous. "Your Honor," out of consideration, Attorney Washington's voice rang out suddenly, stopping Attorney Blackstone. "This child has come with an obvious purpose. This is about her future. We cannot ignore her." The judge raised his hand. His face was grave. "Silence, everyone." His voice echoed. He stared at DeMarco and Attorney Blackstone, silencing their protests. Then his gaze turned to Aaliyah. His expression softened. Aaliyah approached slowly, her small steps echoing loudly on the silent marble. She stopped in the center between the tables of the two lawyers. She looked directly at the judge sitting on his high throne. "Your Honor," Aaliyah said with a trembling voice, but clear to the whole room. "I'm sorry to interrupt." "It's okay, Princess," said the judge with a more paternal tone. "Why are you here? Who brought you?" "I came alone. My auntie brought me, but I snuck in. I heard my daddy say my mommy is bad." DeMarco's eyes went wide. "Aaliyah, watch your words." "Silence, Mr. DeMarco," shouted the judge. "Let the child speak." Shanice covered her mouth. Tears began to flow. Aaliyah swallowed as if gathering courage. She looked at the judge again. Her pure, clear eyes showed sincerity. "Daddy said my mommy is bad. Daddy said my mommy gets very angry. Daddy said my mommy can't take care of me," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. Shanice closed her eyes. This was the end. Aaliyah was going to repeat all of DeMarco's lies, but a sentence made Shanice open her eyes. "But can I show you something?" Aaliyah looked at the judge with pleading eyes. "Something my mommy doesn't know." That phrase hung in the air. Something my mommy doesn't know. Shanice frowned. What did she mean? Attorney Blackstone jumped up again. "Your Honor, this is absurd. A recording from a child cannot be used as evidence. This is an invasion of privacy recorded without permission. Asterisk that recording proves the lies of your expert witness, Attorney Blackstone," retorted Attorney Washington sharply. "This is very intriguing. Enough arguing." The judge banged his gavel. His eyes, previously paternal, now shone intensely. He sensed there was a big lie. "Clerk, help this child. Connect that device to the court monitors right now." "No." DeMarco screamed desperately. He gripped the edge of the table with white knuckles. "I object, Your Honor. This is a setup. Your objection is noted, Mr. DeMarco." "Now sit down," ordered the judge. A clerk approached Aaliyah quickly and carefully took the cracked tablet. He looked for a cable and moments later the large monitor screens on the courtroom wall went black and then showed Aaliyah's tablet home screen. DeMarco covered his face. Simone behind him seemed to shake violently. Third, the accusation that the wife was emotionally unstable, backed by false expert testimony, proven as a blatant scheme. "The video proves you conspired to provoke your wife, record her in secret, and use it to deceive this court." He threw the third sheet. "Your entire lawsuit," the judge's voice rose, "is a pile of garbage based on lies, greed, and adultery. The court dismisses entirely the divorce petition presented by Mr. DeMarco." The gavel struck hard, but the judge wasn't finished. He looked at Attorney Washington and Shanice. "The court will not stop here. Based on this new irrefutable evidence, the court rules to protect the victim. 1. The judge raised a finger. Full custody of the minor Aaliyah is granted unconditionally to her biological mother, Mrs. Shanice." Shanice gasped. The tears now flowing were of relief. She looked at Aaliyah. 2. Continued the judge. "Mr. DeMarco's divorce suit has been dismissed. However, the court suggests that Mrs. Shanice file a countersuit right now." "Mrs. Shanice, do you wish to divorce your husband?" Attorney Washington whispered. Shanice, with a trembling but firm voice, looked directly at DeMarco, who was now defeated with his head bowed. "Yes, Your Honor. I demand a divorce right now." "Good," exclaimed the judge. "The court grants the divorce to Mrs. Shanice on the grounds of adultery and fraud by the husband. Full custody to Mrs. Shanice." 3. The judge stood up. "Now all assets in the name of Mr. DeMarco and Ms. Richardson will be frozen immediately. The court orders a full investigation to trace all funds stolen from Mrs. Shanice. The house currently occupied is declared total property of Mrs. Shanice and Aaliyah." And 4. The judge's voice now resonated throughout the room. "Based on the video evidence and the confessions in this room, I order the immediate arrest of Mr. DeMarco and Ms. Richardson for multiple criminal offenses, including conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, domestic theft, and tampering with evidence in a court of law. Take them away." The security guards immediately handcuffed DeMarco. The man who had entered that morning with arrogance was now taken out, with his head bowed. He walked past Shanice. He didn't dare look his wife in the eye. Simone was also handcuffed. Her screams dried up, leaving only a puffy and messy face. She was dragged away. Her career and her freedom were gone. Shanice was still sitting, trembling. Attorney Washington smiled from ear to ear. "We won, Shanice. We won." Shanice couldn't speak. She simply stood up and walked slowly toward the center of the room. Aaliyah ran toward her. Shanice knelt and hugged her daughter tightly, as if hugging her savior. She cried on her small shoulders. Not tears of sadness, but tears of a mother saved by her little heroine. The aftermath of Judgment Day spread like wildfire. The story of the broken tablet made headlines everywhere. The story of the greedy husband, the fake psychologist, and the 7-year-old heroine dominated local news for weeks. The first few weeks were a blur for Shanice and Aaliyah. Attorney Washington took care of everything. By order of the judge, all of DeMarco and Simone's assets were frozen. The investigation proved that DeMarco had transferred nearly $1 million to Simone's account over the last year. All the money was seized and returned to Shanice's new account. The big cold house was now officially Shanice's, but Shanice couldn't stay there anymore. Too many bad memories. Too many shadows of DeMarco and Simone in every corner. With Attorney Washington's consent, Shanice sold the house. The proceeds from the sale were more than enough to start a new life. The punishment for the villains was swift and severe. Given the overwhelming evidence, DeMarco was sentenced to 12 years in prison for fraud, theft, and perjury. Simone, whose psychologist credentials turned out to be real but criminally used, was sentenced to 8 years, and her license to practice was permanently revoked. The cunning attorney Blackstone was immediately disbarred by the Ethics Committee and faced criminal charges for his participation in the conspiracy. Karma had been paid in full. 3 months after that Judgment Day, the laughter of children was heard in a small green park. Shanice, with the weight of worry gone from her face, smiled as she watched Aaliyah on the swing. They had moved, not to a big house, but to a modest and cozy 3-bedroom apartment. It was full of photos of the two of them, and smelled of cookies Shanice had baked. Shanice had started a small catering business from home. Her culinary skills, which DeMarco always belittled, were now praised by many. Orders were coming in. She was busy and tired, but happy. She was independent. "Mommy, look." Alia ran toward Shanice, who was sitting on a park bench. Her hands were dirty with soil. "The flowers are going to bloom soon." Shanice smiled, stroking Alia's short hair. "Wow, my daughter is very good at planting things." They sat side by side for a while, enjoying the afternoon sun. There was a question Shanice hadn't had the chance to ask calmly. "Princess," began Shanice softly, "can I ask you something?" "What, Mommy?" Alia looked at her with clear eyes. "The video on the old tablet. Why? Why did you record it?" Alia was silent for a moment, as if remembering. "Because I didn't like Auntie Simone." "Why didn't you like her?" "Auntie Simone pretended to be nice, smiled at Mommy, and talked to you at the mall. But when Mommy went to the bathroom, she told Daddy, 'Your wife takes too long.' And in the park too. She saw me, but she told Daddy that Mommy wasn't watching me. But Mommy was watching me." Shanice was amazed. Her little daughter was a sharp observer. "And that night," continued Alia, "Daddy said he was working late, but I heard his car come back. I wanted to show Daddy my new drawing, but when I went down, I saw Daddy come in with Auntie Simone. Daddy hugged her right away. I got scared, so I hid behind the flower pot. So, I recorded there." "Yes, I used the old tablet to record. I remembered Mommy said that if there are bad people, there must be proof." Shanice's heart warmed. She had forgotten she had said that. "But Princess," asked Shanice again. This was the most important question. "Why didn't you tell Mommy? Why did you keep it a secret?" Alia interrupted herself in a low voice. "Daddy said Mommy shouldn't know." Shanice frowned. "Daddy told you that?" "Yes. In the video, Daddy told Auntie Simone, 'My wife is stupid. She won't know.'" Alia thought it was a big secret because Daddy said Mommy shouldn't know. "So, I kept it. I didn't want Daddy to get mad if Mommy found out." It was the pure logic of a child. She had aggravated her father's crime. But she had kept it secret because her own father had told her mother shouldn't know. "So, why did you show it in court?" "Because the judge was going to take Alia away from Mommy. Daddy said Mommy was bad. And Auntie Simone also said Mommy was bad, and that's not true." Alia had tears in her eyes. "I don't want to be separated from Mommy. Mommy isn't bad. Mommy is the best mom. So I had to show the judge that Daddy and Auntie Simone are the bad ones." Shanice couldn't hold back anymore. She hugged Alia tightly. She cried, tears of joy. For all this time she had suffered DeMarco's accusations that she was a failed mother. She had doubted herself, felt destroyed. But before her was the strongest proof that she hadn't failed. She had raised an incredible daughter, a pure, sharp girl who could distinguish truth from falsehood. A brave girl with the courage to act alone to protect her mother. A girl with a pure sense of justice. "Thank you, Princess," whispered Shanice into her daughter's hair. "Thank you for saving me." Alia hugged her. "I love you, Mommy. I love you." To Alia, Shanice undid the hug and looked at her daughter's bright face. Finally, she understood. She had never failed. She had just been raising a heroine, and now both were free for a new beginning. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect, *.